Hello, and welcome to Sobercast, where we provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in podcast format. We're an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into our virtual basket. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Have a great day.
Thank you. My name is Carvell, and I'm an alcoholic. Wait, is that a good thing, or what is that?
It's the first time.
Turn it down. I don't really want to use it. Is it okay if I don't use it?
Use it. It's like $200.
You don't have to use it.
Let's get our money. Put it on the table.
Drop the mic.
My sobriety date is July 6, 2010.
Yeah.
And I have a sponsor who knows he's my sponsor. I have sponsees, one of which is in this room, and I work this program to the best of my ability, which is not always that great, but it's been enough to keep me sober for 5+ years. I don't, my life story isn't that much different than anyone else's. There are some things in my life that gave me the feeling that I was different from an early age. Some stuff you could put on paper and look at and say, well, if that happened to a person, that person would probably become an alcoholic, or if they had this experience, this is the kind of thing. And there's like heartache and dread and fear and violence and like just regular life stuff. But, in the big book, it says that, if you ask an alcoholic why they drink, they can come up with a lot of different reasons, but there's only one honest reason, and that reason is, I don't know, I drink because I'm an alcoholic. And when I look at my life, everything that happened to me has happened to someone else who didn't become an alcoholic. So I don't think that the stuff that I experienced is the reason that I drank. I think I drank because drinking was a solution for me to the way that I felt. And it was the first solution I found, and it was for a long time the most effective solution that I found. And the first time actually drugs are a part of my story. I don't know how much people want to be hygienic about alcohol versus drugs, but for me it was all mixed together. And the first time I got high, I actually got high before I got drunk, really. The first time I got high, I had a feeling that everything was going to make sense from now on. Like, all the stuff that had bothered me about who I was, everything that bothered me about the main problem I had, which is that I was alive and I was here and I had to deal with stuff, it felt like there might be a solution when I got high. That first night, I felt like I was part of some winning team, and I didn't want that feeling to ever end. And I returned to the thing that created that feeling over and over again, and it never worked again. But I kept thinking that it might. And I remember I was 14 the first time I drank alcohol in any significant way. I was 16 the first time I got high. And I remember being 21 years old. And at this point, I had already dedicated my whole life to drinking and drugs. I had moved in with a bunch of people. We were growing weed. My whole identity was based around partying and drinking. And I remember turning to my friend at that time and I said, do you remember what we felt like before we ever smoked? When we were 14? And he was like, yeah, man. And I was like, we should go back to that. And he was like, yeah, dude, we should. And it was another 20 years before I got sober. And that's the insanity of this disease, is that for me, what this disease means is that, I was talking to my son about this. I have a 12-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter. And my son, who was talking about, he's learning about all these different law, different forms of law in his history class. And he was talking about using it to metaphor how different parents parented. And he said, see, our family is not a crime and punishment family, Dad. We don't run a crime and punishment system. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, it doesn't work because everyone in this house is an addict, and addicts don't respond to punishment. That's my 12-year-old. And I said, how do you know that? He said, because that's what you told me an alcoholic is. A regular person drinks, and then bad things happen, and they go, you know what? I'm not drinking after this, and then they don't. Because they're like, I didn't like that. Something bad happened, I didn't like it, so I stopped. But alcoholics go, this terrible thing happened. I hope it doesn't happen again, but I'm going to do the same stuff. And that was the way my life and drinking went. I just kept hoping that the bad stuff wouldn't happen, and then it kept happening, and then I was like, well, this time I'm going to do it different, and then it's not going to happen, and then it did. I'd be like, man, let me try it again. And I did that literally, I mean, let's see, I was 35 when I got sober. I was, 17, so almost 20 years I did that. And it never did work, y'all. It never worked, and I still didn't stop. And, my life, I was one of those people that wanted everything to look good and work. I was always kind of a high achiever, so I did the stuff that you were supposed to do because I didn't want to get in trouble. That's like the thing I hated most at all. I never wanted to get in trouble. I didn't want to disappoint people. I really wanted to please everyone. I was a big people pleaser. So I always got the good grades, and I always went to the thing, and I got to college and the scholarship and the whole thing, and I'm doing this stuff. But inside what was happening is that I just couldn't take life on life's terms. I was so obsessively concerned with what everyone thought of me at any given moment. And when I came into this program, I was just telling my sponsor about this. When I came into this program, I had heard almost everything that we have to say because I had been in some like what was read today, like at some self-help group, some like meditation retreat, blah, blah, blah. Everything, I'd heard all of it. But there was one thing that I had never heard anyone say before I came in here, and that was, what other people think of you is none of your business. The first time I heard that, I literally looked around the room like, what the fuck did they just say? And everyone was laughing like, yeah, that's totally true. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what other people think of me is my whole business. That's literally my, like, profession. You know what I mean? And that, it's taken me years to unravel that, to stop playing God, to stop making up stories about what's happening in your head and then intervening myself into those stories and making myself the star of those stories and then trying to control the outcome. It's a lot of control. Every time I left the house, I lived in New York City, so like in the course of a day, I was a bike messenger in New York City. In the course of a day, you see like 30,000 people. And I was concerned about what every single one of them thought of me. That is a very exhausting existence. At the end of a day like that, you need a drink. Because you just can't do that sober. And I drank because I needed relief from that, and it was the only way I knew how to get it. And like, I'll tell you that my bottom happened, I don't even fuck about it, because I had so many terrible things happen that any normal person would have been like, woo, that's it. But it didn't even occur to me after they happened the next day when I'd be looking at the police report or like trying to like repair the broken relationship or whatever, or trying to figure out where the tattoo came from. I literally got a tattoo in a blackout. The next day, it would never occur to me that I had a problem with drugs or alcohol. And when I finally did get sober, the only thing that really happened was that one day I drank so much alcohol that I didn't even know how much I drank. I just finished a whole big-ass bottle of Jack Daniels over the course of a day, and I didn't feel drunk. And I had 2 kids at that point, and we had a barbecue. It was right before July 4th. We had this barbecue, and everyone was over there and partying and feeling good and everything, and I'm drinking all day this stuff, and I'm out there with, like, the Kiss the Cook apron. I had a family in the house. Like, everything was working, And at the end of the day, I went back to get yet another drink because my ex and I, she's also in this program, we were professional drinkers at this point. Like, you got to be done drinking by 8, got to get the kitchen clean by 9, kids in bed by 9:30, then you can drink, but make sure all the laundry's done. Like, we were really good at it. So kid's house was clean, grill was scrubbed, meat put away, everything is good. So I go to get another drink, and it's empty. And I turned to my wife, and I was like, dude, you got to stop drinking so much. Like, look at this bottle. Like, you finished this whole thing, man. Like, I'm worried about you. And she was like, I was drinking vodka. Like, I didn't drink that stuff. That was you. You've been drinking that stuff all day. And it just, for some reason, the light bulb went off. People in my family died of this disease. One of the women that raised me drank herself to death. And I watched her go from a vibrant, loving, caring, fun, playful aunt who always had a Greyhound in one hand to somebody that weighed like 80 pounds and lived alone in this apartment with all the windows shut that smelled of cigarettes. And I watched her die. And at the time, I didn't even know what happened. I thought she just couldn't control her liquor. But that night, when I looked at that empty bottle, it just occurred to me, oh, this is how it happened. I literally had no control over how much alcohol I drank. And I filled up that thing with water because I had all the tricks, So I drank all the water, took a couple aspirin, and was like, well, I'll be careful tomorrow. And that night I tried to sleep and I couldn't. And I just started thinking about it. And I had this image of like a freight train and I realized that my drinking was like a one-way ticket, and it only went to one place. And for whatever reason that night, it just occurred to me, there's no other way. And if you're new or if you're wrestling with this, I would say that, the only time that this changed for me is when I stopped believing there was another option. But for the previous 20 years, I knew that sobriety was a possibility, but that this other thing could also work. So I tried every other thing. That's what that reading is about. And this was the last house in the block. And once I finally was disabused of the notion that there was any other way I could live, like literally survive. Once I finally got freed of the notion that there was another way I could do this, that's when I walked into the rooms. And it wasn't easy, but I did do what you guys said as much as I could. And right now, the program I work is not perfect, but it's based on evidence. I did enough stuff to get some evidence that the stuff works. So then I did more of it, and I got more evidence, and get more of it, and more evidence. And now it's almost automatic because I just know that it works. I'm gonna end on this. They use that example of the jaywalker and the thing, and I was telling my sponsor the other day, it doesn't take any willpower for you not to run out in front of traffic because you have evidence built up. Even though you've never been hit by a car, you've been hit by enough things, and you've seen enough movies, and you fully believe that if you get hit by a car at 70 miles an hour, it's going to be an unfortunate thing for you. So you don't even have to work at it; you just don't do it. And he's new in the program, and I've been here for some time. And I was saying that's how my program is now. I just generally believe with 88 to 97% certainty. You always got to have that doubt because I'm an alcoholic. But with 88 to 97% certainty, I believe that if I step out of this room and into those streets and pick up a bottle, it's going to be unfortunate, the consequences. So the only step I do perfectly is the first one, which says don't drink no matter what. And the saying that I believe most in here is keep coming back, because you have to keep coming to see this thing work. So with that, I'm really happy to be here, and thanks for letting me be of service.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm Patricio, an alcoholic, and I'm nervous. This is my first two-speaker meeting. In fact, I didn't even know that there were two-speaker meetings. Can you hear me? Everybody hear me okay? You hear me okay? All right. I can speak up, so. Can we use the mic? Anybody? All right.
The people that paid for it really want to hear it.
I guess so.
I think that's it.
Hello? Testing, testing. Can you hear me now? Is that okay? All right. At any rate, I am very glad to be here, but my disclaimer is I'm nervous, so please bear with me. Listen, I have the feeling that there's a lot of good sobriety in this room, and to me that's a huge comfort. Where to begin? I thought about when I was asked to speak, maybe about 3 weeks ago. I thought, wow, what can I possibly say for a long period of time? And there's a lot of stories, there's a lot of mess to talk about, but I hope that I can convey more of the message tonight, and a message that means something to me, and I hope to all of you. And in fact, I think any message that I carry will mean something to you, because we're sort of on this same journey and mission together. And I've kind of learned that being in these rooms. My sober date is, I selected the middle of the month because it's a little iffy, exact date, but it was November 15th, 2005. I'm in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Solid alcohol was a big part of my disease. I got intervened on in a hospital I work. I also worked all day, so I apologize for that, in that this is the only time I could really make it when I was given some dates. So I hope I don't nod off. I won't nod off, but I might, kind of go on tangents. So at any rate, I'm in the medical profession. I was at work, and I was intervened on the next day, and my medical director pulled me in a room with another witness, one of my colleagues, and blah blah blah. And are you an addict? Are you addicted to this substance or whatever? And I remember that very clearly because it was a totally unbidden moment when I just blurted out, "Yes!" And probably this weight that was on me for years and years and years just kind of dropped off. And I mean, I don't know where that came from, and I didn't know what would happen next, of course, but that was my first moment of relief. I knew nothing about true recovery at that point. I knew within a couple of minutes that there would be a lot of consequences. Within probably about an hour, I had to sign 3 contracts with my partnership, with the hospital I worked at, their corporate office, so actually 4 contracts, and the Medical Board of California, which is a very, very good board. It was called the Diversion Program that I had to sign a contract with. And diversion programs in various states are designed to protect you from those of us in the medical profession that are impaired, drugs or alcohol or certain dangerous behaviors. And so that's a very good thing. It didn't feel like a good thing at that time, and I felt that I had got busted, and I felt that way for not too long, but for a couple of months, until I realized that the nurse who went to my director really saved my life. And that's how I think about it today. And I feel very grateful for his bravery and courage and doing what he had to do, doing what he knew was right. And I haven't seen him since. So it was almost 10 years ago. But I thank him almost every day when I think about him. So that's how I sort of got into the rooms. I went into what's called a diversion program, and it was very, very good. Worked with a lot of other physicians and a few nurses and pharmacists who were impaired by the disease of addiction, alcohol, and drugs. And it was scary, and it was very, very, I felt humiliation and embarrassment, and those are really, really hard feelings at first. But in my very first meeting, I was told by several of my fellows that it would get better. It's going to get better. And there was such earnestness and kindness in their words when they told me that that was my second moment of great relief. And I had no idea what they meant, but it felt good to hear them say that. I probably within 2 or 3 days of that November 15th, I went to my first AA meeting, and it was a promises meeting. I have to say that I thought that walking into a room of Alcoholics Anonymous was my bottom, very humiliating and very embarrassing, and I didn't know too much then. And but I was welcomed by total strangers who I felt were sincere and looked at me kindly and told me it would get better. They said, "Welcome." They said, "Keep coming back." They said all the things that, well, I don't see our signs, but they said all the little things that we say to each other that I thought for a moment were corny, but even in my very first meeting, they meant a lot to me. So, our traditions and our sayings and what we do really, really matters. Really matters. Really mattered to me at my very, very first meeting. And I always try to keep that in mind when speaking to newcomers or people of any number of days or years of sobriety. What we say and what we do and our literature really, really matters. It mattered to me, and it made a huge, 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 huge difference. So that's how I got into these rooms. Probably for the first of all, my contract required not 90 and 90, required 1,200 and 1,200. So I had to go to, this was wonderful now. I mean, saved my life. But I had my meeting card, and I have a whole drawer full of them, and it's over 1,000. It's closer to 1,200. But that was a requirement: biological testing, support group, a whole lot of things. It was a big contract. It was like 25 pages. So anyway, as I said, my first meeting was a promises meeting, and when the promises were read, I thought, wow, this is really kind of special. I mean, I kind of lifted my head and felt, wow, this is really something. Those are pretty deep promises. Hi, boy. I probably for 3 months I really couldn't speak. I mean, hey, Guillermo, I really didn't think I had anything to say. Basically, what it was. I didn't know myself. I did know how to listen, and I think my background in medicine gave me a lot of good training in listening, so that's a good thing. And I sat in meetings and I listened, and I actually listened at several guys that I thought about tapping to be my sponsor. And probably about 6 weeks in, I tapped a guy that would be my first sponsor in Alcoholics, and actually my only sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous. And as I said, I listened to him for 6 weeks, and I listened to his qualities, and I watched him again. I was, I don't know, sat in the middle, sometimes in the back, never in the front, and never spoke, but I listened. And what I saw this man do consistently, not just on the first day, but the next day and the next week. And he went to meetings regularly, and I saw him regularly. But what I saw him do is greet the newcomer. I mean, he would laser in on anybody who identified himself or herself as a newcomer in the rooms. And I just thought, wow, what a nice thing to do. Well, I would never do that. I mean, I never thought of doing that. I never thought that was I didn't know it was an ethic in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I had no idea that he was truly living the program, but it was very, very attractive to see him do that. And I liked what he said when he spoke. And it wasn't necessarily that pithy, but he seemed awfully honest and awfully present with what was going on with him that day and that week, in his business as a contractor and his relationships and previous relationships and his struggles. And I thought, wow, that's kind of amazing. I mean, I was not used to men especially speaking honestly about necessarily anything except the next career move. And, many these men in my field, in my profession, very, very competitive, very, very smart, and were certainly models for me. Those are my models, and I really didn't know, sort of another way to be. So it was very unique and refreshing and wonderful to see this man in action and actually really sharing. And he was also one of the first ones that came up to me and greeted me when I first went in. So about 6 weeks into it, I finally tapped him and said, "You know what? Would you be my sponsor?" And I had to ask somebody else, "How do you do this?" And you just go up to somebody and you talk to them. Try to look them in the eye. That kind of helps. And he said yes, and it was really, really wonderful. And he's been integral to my recovery since that day. So I'm going to give a little bit of my story and sort of how I got to that point, and then, as I said, try to talk about the message, at least how it's been to me and in my journey. I feel like I have a long way to go. In fact, the rest of my life, I want to do this journey of recovery for the rest of my life. It's the best thing that's going in my life, and my life is very, very rich now. Not in money, that's for darn sure, but very rich in spirit, and I have a lot to be grateful for. I have an awful lot to be grateful for. Not every day is perfect. I don't feel happy, joyous, and free at every moment. But if I'm not happy or joyous, I mostly feel free. And freedom is probably the greatest gift that this program continues to give me on a daily basis. And I'll talk about that in a little bit too. So I was born in Oakland, California. I think we're in Oakland, aren't we? We're close to Oakland. My dad was in the Navy, stationed at Treasure Island when it was a naval base or part of the Navy. And we lived in San Francisco. I was the firstborn, and my mother, the hospital where she was to deliver me was at Oak Knoll, the Naval Hospital, which no longer is a hospital here in the hills of Oakland. So I guess instead of going to, because we lived on Schrader, which is like 3 blocks from the Parnassus campus of UCSF, she and my dad drove, and it was a 52 Ford, looks like a bug, drove across the Bay Bridge to have me in Oakland, because that's what they were supposed to do. And I feel very at home in Oakland, and I feel very at home in San Francisco. I'm a very fair weather Raiders fan, and fair weather 49ers fan, fair weather Giants fan, and the Oakland team, whatever they are. I know their team, but I'm just a fair weather fan. But mostly a 49ers fan, because I guess I was told by my mom and dad that they lived a block from Kezar Stadium, which is also no longer football. I think it's a track now, but it was the first home of the San Francisco 49ers. And I went to a lot of games in utero. I didn't see Wyatt Tittle, but I heard my mother was just a really rabid fan. So I was the firstborn, and I'm the fortunate son. I have 5 sisters and 1 brother. And when we moved back to New Mexico, and I was about 2 years old, my dad's alcoholism really started to take off. My mom and dad looked, from baby pictures I have, and sounded like they were really in love and had a very just incredible, magical time in San Francisco. And the disease took hold. We went back to New Mexico, and it was really, really rough for them, and then for her 7 children that she had within a 9.5-year period. She's Catholic, don't you know? And so those are my early days, baby days, and I think that I was a happy baby. I have some happy baby pictures. I've shared this in a lot of meetings, so if you've heard this before, forgive me, but all the baby pictures I have, or the few that I still have, a lot of them were in Navy bars in San Francisco, surrounded by drunken sailors on their shoulders with, tables just full of long necks. My dad was an alcoholic. He loved a beer. That's what he lived for. He was a very, very happy drunk. And I remember him being very, very happy probably until about 7 or 8. And actually, he would be happy all the time if he could drink all the time. My mother interfered with his Coors and Ham's happiness. I just remember at probably in grade school, early grade school, things were getting there was just this tension in the home. Many of you are from alcoholic homes. Some of you aren't. So you all know, and it's refreshing that actually. That's that tension that a child doesn't understand, certainly. And all of a sudden, one day, this mother who's your, saint, and just your whole world is just, the next day is screaming and unhappy, and you just can't figure things out as a kid. I couldn't figure things out, that's for darn sure. Even at an early age, like 5, 6, 7, or 8, it was, I was the firstborn. I was fortunate in many, many ways, but I really had to be like the little man for my little sisters and my brother, who came about 6 years later. And, I got to tell you, I thought all this was really, really normal for quite a while. There were a lot of alcoholics on my dad's side of the family. 6 brothers were alcoholics. 6 of them and one of his sisters all died of the disease. On my mother's side, maybe 30%. Alcoholism is a really big disease and really prevalent. It was really prevalent in my family's in New Mexico. And that's really all I saw at family events. I mean, deaths, funerals, weddings, confirmations, baptism. It was all about the alcohol, and second about the kind of the event. It seemed to me. That's how I saw things as a kid. I saw my dad sort of get happy and, talkative and friendly and vivacious when he drank. So, that was kind of modeled to me as, that was his medicine. I thought, so how bad can it be? I mean, he's kind of happy and good. So it took a while to kind of figure out how bad things were. And I think my mom, by the time I was 8 or 9, was just, she was really suffering. And at that age, I mean, I was, she was pushing me out of the house to look, go find your dad in these little bars in Albuquerque, in the South Valley, in the North Valley, in the Heights. I don't know if anybody of you know Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's sort of on a grid and a lot of cheap bars. Kind of like every town in this country, I guess, but that was my town. I guess there was a TV series about Albuquerque. I never saw it, but made Albuquerque popular. About an addict, I think. At any rate, I remember just having to go into these bars all the time, and then, as a little kid that walked, you could just walk into the bars as a kid, at least at that time. And so these bar owners and bartenders, ladies that seemed to always be there talking to the men, they all got to know me. So my first drink was Shirley Temple and Roy Rogers. Those are like the little sodas with the maraschino cherries in it. And they look like a cocktail. So you just get this, give this kid this little cocktail that didn't have any alcohol then, but it was like, wow, this is really, cool. I felt liked. I felt grown up, and, hung out with my dad as he finished the next 4 or 5 beers and, helped him stagger home. So that was a lot that was going on, sort of in my grade school years. My young sisters were trying to deal with my mother, and they were the little mommies that had to, cook and take care of household stuff. We all lived in a little tract house in Albuquerque, 3 tiny bedrooms, for 9 people. So, I loved my family, but I loved getting out even more. So my first escape was on bicycles and just hanging out in the neighborhood, hiking, getting out of the hills and mountains. And like I said, I was fortunate in that my mom and dad both wanted me to have a good education. My sisters, my brother didn't have the same emphasis, so I got to go to a very good parochial school in Albuquerque. And I thought, wow, that was I wouldn't say drug, but education was great. And what I learned sort of in grade school and junior high is that if I did well, I could get out of Albuquerque. So that's what I did, And that decision was made really early that I'll do well. And, my parents are really supporting me. Really suffering with my dad's alcoholism, and it was just getting worse. And I decided, I have a life to lead. I've got things to do, places to go. I really didn't want to be around that pain that I could sense and feel and see in my mom and dad every day. And there was domestic violence, not a whole lot, but enough to be very scary. I realized that my dad was a lot more alcoholic than other kids' dads around the neighborhood. And there was that embarrassment. And, it's just that difference that kind of drove me to seek a different way. And so that's kind of how I got out of Albuquerque. It's kind of how I got into education, to drugs and alcohol, anything that could make me kind of escape from that reality, because I really knew nothing else. And when I look back in my life, it seemed to start there, and then it just went on for years and years and years. I mean, years and years and years. I really had no consequences in my alcoholism and active addiction. I didn't have DUIs. I didn't go to jail. I got number and number in my soul, that's for sure. And that felt worse and worse. I didn't know true happiness. I could get high and feel like I was somewhat of a human being. And when I encountered my special alcohols of choice, it was really medication. I mean, it treated my depression, it treated anxiety, it treated loss. Alcohol and drugs are powerful. Alcohol and drugs. They work. They work on us. And then they don't work. And all of us in this room know that. It's hard to explain that to people who are not in rooms like this. Anyway, I made a lot of choices that were hurtful to me and others, especially in relationships, as I just kind of went through this kind of state of being dependent on alcohol and drugs to feel somewhat human. And, they finally caught up with me. They finally, they catches up with all of us. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. I even dabbled in various kinds of spirituality in earnest, but, there's a Leonard Cohen song, I had to do it drunk, or I had to do it high, Then I could really speak to God, and I could really get down and holy, but, And so I thought that was really good. And I was able to kind of still make it academically in school and function, and then there's sort of that mentality of studying and working hard, and then playing hard and partying hard. And it just, I knew it was vacuous. It was a vacuous life, but just over years, habit begets habit. So fast forwarding to just kind of coming to when it all ended, I could not do for me what God did for me, and that's that one day in November 2005, it happened. And I think from there, I just really haven't turned back. And I hope I never will. What I've learned in my recovery journey, there's many, many things, but, a lifetime of suffering that occurred to my parents and myself, I have to face. We all have to face it. We call it fear, and I just had the fear of facing it. Face everything and recover is the acronym I use instead of fuck everything and run, which is what I did. And, this program is a mystery and a journey. Our readings, I keep discovering things that I maybe didn't hear before, but there's just deeper and deeper meanings with each reading. As I said before, everything about our literature is important and valid and makes a difference. Makes a difference to me. Makes a difference to newcomers. I read the other day that our big book is like a cookbook, right? I mean, it's like a cookbook. But if we just read it, we're going to starve. So, I really understand that this is a program of action. And I love that about Alcoholics Anonymous. And what is action? There's many ways, but I guess the most obvious course of action that we can take is in service. And there's many ways to provide service. It's sharing in meetings like this. It's sponsorship. It's being a sponsee. It's being a kind greeter at meetings. It's sharing outside of meetings, and it's serving outside of meetings. What I've also kind of learned or really, really appreciate and gives me great comfort today is that this is a way of life, and a way of life that I want, a way of life that I found maybe somewhat serendipitously, but, ironically, and I hear this from a lot of you, that it's a way of life that we've always wanted and we're always seeking but didn't know how to get it. So I feel blessed. I feel that I'm in the right place at the right time, right here and now. Spiritual principles, pop up in the darndest ways. And I think serendipity is a spiritual principle. And to me, it's just kind of listening to the lessons of God. We have the opportunity to experience thrills and joys and life beyond anything we can imagine every single day. And we have the freedom to do that because we're sober today. This I did not know when I first came into these rooms. I did not know in the beginning. Thank God I had some degree of desperation and at least was able to listen a little bit and to listen to your stories, read the literature, and read it over and read it over and over and start the repetition and start the pattern for this new way of life. I'm very grateful today. I have 3 wonderful sponsees, 2 incredible sponsors, a family of people in the groups I go to, a group of men that I can trust like I've never trusted in my life. This isn't what I thought recovery would look like. Like I said, there's days that are hard and difficult, but, I understand the word serenity. I mean, I can feel some serenity in the storm or calamity and realize it's just one day and kind of get a quiet moment and say, hey, that ain't so bad. I mean, let me see if I can provide service to somebody else. This person's having a little more struggle, or a little bit more pain than I am at this moment. And that helps. And if I do that and I kind of have that attitude on a daily basis, one day at a time, I'm coming to realize that that's what Alcoholics Anonymous is. That's the program. For me, that's living it. That's the program in action. There's no, goal or touchdown or, endpoint. It's, it's a daily living, breathing, organic program. I've learned that for myself. I see it in you. It's just That's one of the greatest joys, is just seeing my fellows and fellas recovering together and growing spiritually, emotionally, mentally. And it's an incredible gift. It's an incredible gift. So I think I'm getting close. And it's been wonderful talking to you. I apologize for being a little spacey. It's just been a long day. But I'm truly grateful for being here. And I truly appreciate your listening and your kind attention. Like I said when I started, I feel recovery in this room. And wow, it's just a really great place to be. Thank you very much. I'm Patricio, an alcoholic.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.